Hello. This is Derek from Wonderful Tea and Tao Teaware. Welcome back to another episode of Tea Soup, a podcast all about tea culture, life in modern China, and Chinese tea. I'm your host, Derek Poskin. I've been living in China since 2016, and I've been drinking, buying, and selling Chinese tea for the past decade. So, pop on that kettle, heat up your teaware, and let's get this session started. Thank you very much.
Very good.
Okay.
It sounds like a podcast. Yeah. Anyways.
All right. So, hello. This is Derek from Wonderful Tea.
And Alex from Wonderful Tea.
Wow, amazing.
Incredible. How could it be?
Yep. The last time we did a podcast together was virtual. You were in Hefeng, and we talked about the fiasco.
Yes, we did. Out of a tin can on my end.
Yeah. Apologies for that audio, but hopefully this audio will be a little better. That was a really interesting episode. I think we got a lot of feedback about, how difficult it is to actually do this kind of cooperative stuff we're doing on the mountain with the villagers.
Sure.
And I think it kind of goes into a lot of what I talk about in the podcast, where we're kind of unveiling the myth behind like Chinese tea farming, Chinese tea farmers, what it means to live in China and work in China, and then working with these villagers, trying to get them to go organic. And I think you actually recently you said you won over some of the villagers.
Yeah, so I guess like the enemy number one, or the guy in the village who was most opposed to organic was this guy named Yulin, and he was recently in the hospital. He finally got cirrhosis, so like he was definitely like earning it though. This is the guy like he would come to every meetings like totally drunk and went to the hospital, and then his son's a teacher, and I met his son in the course of the events. Anyways, he goes to the hospital, he comes out, then his wife gets sick, right?
Oh.
And he was up there picking tea, and then all by himself, again, he had to follow along because there was a meeting back in January where the village team leader, Wang Changshan, said, okay, we're all going to try to go organic this year. We're going to accept the yield reduction with the promise that come July, we're going to give juicier dividends, right? It'll be easier for us to market you if you go organic. So Yulin was kind of dragging his feet, going along with it, cursing us along the way. Then he gets sick, and his wife gets sick. So he's back up there picking tea by himself and then carrying it down the mountain. And then that one day was me and this other guy, Giacomo, maybe we'll meet later, and we're just taking the tea down the hill for him. And it was a simple gesture. It was like carrying the tea down the mountain. But his son heard about that and met me in Enshe the next night, and then they said that they talked to the dad, Yulin in question, and he's on board. Wow. So this is the guy who was most opposed to it, and now he will at least tolerate our efforts until July. But I'm sure at the end of the day, whether or not we actually can raise their income will be the factor that determines if they go along for it. Now they're convinced, okay, we're not just assholes out here trying to ruin them, trying to undermine their livelihood. There's something to this, and hopefully, again, if they make more money together, with us, with going organic, I think it could be a lasting change. So he was definitely the most opposed to it, and now at least has a smile on his face. I think now I think he's kind of also changed his tune in general when it comes to the cooperative, because his son that evening was like really saying, okay, we're gonna have to really think more about tea, because Yulin was the guy last year who was like, we should just sell all the fields, have some boss come in here, right? Build a factory, and now it seems like he's more serious about trying to figure out, with the resources we have now, with the tea fields he has now, what can we do to make it more of a sustainable, agriculturally oriented project, right? He was thinking about planting fruit trees among the tea plants, right, or whatever. Oh, yeah. So he's thinking in a new direction. So.
Okay, I mean it's amazing how much one small kind act of kindness.
Yeah, that's right. It didn't really save him much time. Right. It didn't really help him materially in any substantial way. But it was just like building guanxi, I guess.
Right. It just makes me wonder, like, in the past, did he not experience those kinds of acts of like solidarity that we would like to say?
That's right. Because before it was always just like, we're having a meeting, right?
Yeah, come here to the meeting.
Here's the meeting. Okay, here's the document. And please read the Excel. Please do your homework, right? I prepared this document. Here's how I'm gonna, so it was always like, come to the meeting. Here's the document. And I think that worked for maybe some of the party members there, because they could see the intention behind it, right?
Right, and that's one thing I wanted to bring up too, the intentionality, where it's like, sure, we have very good intentions.
Sure.
But do we have the actual effect yet? Like,
Sure,
is
sure,
their
sure.
livelihood being raised or not? Is it just wasting time in meetings? You know,
That's right,
and
yeah.
then seeing somebody who's actually helping you take tea down from the mountain, that goes beyond just good
That's right.
intentions, right?
That's right. Yeah. So that, I guess that was for him certainly the second thing, which I would say is like, so like last year, of course, we did the small token dividends, right? Not a substantial
Which
sum of money.
we brought out of our own pockets, right?
Completely our own pockets. They put nothing towards that materially, right? Like they didn't. It was not their tea that made us that money.
Yeah.
I think initially, for those
We
who
tried,
remember,
we tried.
there was like the Hafong Solidarity Sampler. I think we sold like 4 of those last
Yeah.
spring. So that was absolutely not.
So we made like less than $200.
That's
and,
right. Yeah. So
and
it
then
was not
gave the villagers each like 500.
500 RMB a pop.
Yeah, so like $90 each for 10 households.
8.
8 households, yeah.
Yep. So.
But yeah.
So
that's the point of like, okay, sometimes we do need to bring it past intentionality, even if it's not there yet. This is like the idea of like kind of running any business, like faking it till you make it.
Yep,
We're
that's
just
right.
like, we're not there yet, but we want everyone to believe it. and so we'll fund it ourselves, we'll do this ourselves, we'll take this cut, we'll eat this cost. And then really just doing a lot of that to make it start rolling in its own. And so I remember you showed a interesting group chat screenshot where you're like, hey guys, we're going to do this meeting or something like that. And all the villagers gave you a shota.
So like,
I got it.
What?
I'll be there.
What that was about was, so historically, Lo Xinping, who was the leader of the cooperative, village leader initially, right?
Yeah.
He would come up the mountain every year to pick the tea, right, in his van. He does not dare this year to go anywhere because the cooperative deeply in debt down below, right? And like, I think he's embarrassed to go up there. He doesn't want to like. He feels like, so he feels like the people they just become unreasonable, right? So his attitude is becoming less cooperative. He feels like everyone's just unreasonable, and they're all pushing me so hard, and they all want money right now. And I think this is a materially derived emotional state because he's not been selling tea well, and he hasn't had money even to pay past accounts completely, right? So like. Because of that, he feels like, everyone's being so unreasonable, everyone's pushing me, they're all being so mean to me. And, certainly they have been unreasonable occasionally, as we experience. Not unreasonable, but they have been occasionally...
Recalcitrant.
No, what's the best word for this? Like, there are a few households which are, like, if you read like William Hinton's account of socialism in the villages, in Longbo village in Shanxi, there are always a couple rascals in any cooperative, right, who are like undermining the project. Like in our case, like Auntie Tong, she's the one who will like sneak. Is
that our popo?
That's not our popo. That's Tan popo. She's fine, but like Auntie Tong is the one who, when she noticed because it was supposed to be organic tea, right? My initial idea for the first week was we're gonna give them an inflated price, right? Organic tea, you should get a better price because you guys have accepted less of a yield, right? So we're gonna give you an inflated price right at the farm gate. Which for most of the households happily received, all went well. We're subsidizing you to please, thank you for we're taking on the risk, right, too, but thank you for, following along. And within 3 days, she figured out she could go down to the bridge and buy all this non-organic tea and take it up the trail. No one would see her. So her yield went from 10 jin this day, 15 jin, 90 jin. And it was like, what's going on? And then she just she just took, and she mixed it together, but she didn't check it. She got swindled at the bridge because within the bags, the bundles she brought, it was Longjing on the outside, but it was Piang Tezao on the inside.
Like different cultivars?
Different cultivars, that's right. The different
obvious,
cultivars. Semi-obvious, but they're all mixed together, and when it got down to the factory, Grandpa's son was just like, this is useless. So he made it still, but he separated it, right?
Oh, wow. So I'm happy Sichuan knows enough to see the varietal, be like, nope.
Nope, yeah. And then I got a call from Laura that night who's just like, Fanchella, it's like you flipped the car over. You've messed up big time now. Fanchella, you flipped the car over, now Tong knows what's up. And, we had the next day I went up to our landlord, also part of this village up top, Wang Jianguo, and I was just like, if this keeps happening, the whole project's gonna fail, right? And then be like, we all need to kind of close ranks here and make sure she doesn't do that again. And we need to huxiang jiandu, you all need to kind of supervise each other to make sure, or else the project's not gonna work. And I think just historically, the People's Communes in China, they acted cooperatively together, but there was no real room for sort of market speculation activity. It was kind of involuntary. In the same way, we've made it involuntary in this situation because the idea is if you don't cooperate, if you don't go along with this, there is going to be no project, no inflated price. And this year, no one was going up to the mountain to get their tea. There was no competing factories. There's a glut on the market, right? Nobody wants their crummy picked tea from an inconvenient location, right?
Yeah.
So there is no market competition functionally in this situation. So consequently, if we say, hey, either we all work together or we're not going to do it, that creates a situation where you kind of have to close ranks, right? Or else you do something else. You just don't do tea this season.
Plant fruit trees or
Plant
something.
fruit trees, or do something else, right? So
Yeah, no, it's on that borders of monopoly where it's just like a
Sure.
dangerous situation to be like, hey, like either you play by our rules or no one's making any money.
yeah,
It's like, but it's like unfortunate because like also like we're the only means to like actually make it a viable product, right?
that's right. Yeah, I
Because
mean,
we
yeah,
have like the Taobao store, like the Amazon store.
sure.
And so that's actually making a little bit of profit. We're showing that it is potentially sellable. As you mentioned, there's a glut on the market where it's like across all of China, right?
Correct,
It's like
correct.
the tea market this year in 2024 is so far down. Prices essentially across the board have dropped, except for like really high regions. Like Shihu Longjing, that stayed pretty stable. A lot of the nicer villages in Yunnan have stayed pretty stable. Fuding white tea has dropped. And so the percentage is down a little bit. And everyone's just like, man, this is a hard economy. And
That's
so,
right. Yeah. So in a hard year for tea, right? We have to try to maybe it's not possible to sell all the tea in China or to fix the general situation, but I still think it's possible for one small community of 8 to 10 households, depending if Qingbin comes back or not. 8 to 10 households can probably find a place in the international retail market and at least make that more sustainable for them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a small ship, right?
That's right. A small ship, I think, can make it through these dangerous waters, but I think, yeah, most of the fleet's going to sink.
Yeah. But yeah, because you mentioned you told me about Zhangjiajie, where they've
Yeah.
they've outlawed Jiating Nongchangs, like household green tea farms in the entire city of Zhangjiajie, where they have the Hallelujah Mountains in Hunan. They've just said nobody can Sha-Qing their tea anymore. They've closed down all of the small household factories. Nobody can nobody can kill the green. Nobody can make green tea except for like a certain amount of bigger.
I think, yes, you have to be like a registered enterprise, right? Factory.
Yeah.
So if it's like your own household production, either your own wok or you're making it, they've gone around and they've put these strips of paper over it, right? Like, all right, you can't touch this this year.
forbidden.
It's forbidden, so.
But that's a response to there being an inflation of tea.
That's right. There really is. Well, I mean, there's a glut of product, right?
Yeah.
So the prices are deflated, and in that situation, if you think about this from like a policymaker perspective, you need to reduce the tea on the market, right? So on the one hand, by going after these smaller producers, they are probably lower quality. There's less standardization, but at the same time, you're protecting the enterprises who are giving you tax revenue.
That's also true. Yeah.
So it's like. These small producers here are definitely bearing more of the brunt of this economic downturn or this glut of tea, whereas these bigger producers now, hey, they get less competition, right?
Right.
Government still gets their taxes, but these small producers, you got to do something else, right? Sorry, you can't make your tea. All you can do is pick it. So you're only going to get the value of picking the tea. You're not going to get the value of production.
Yeah, I mean, and this is, comes as an extra blow to us because we've always seen like tea as that cash crop in these rural areas.
Sure.
Where it's like, okay, you have coal and bamboo. The coal mines are dried up. Remember, this is Anhui.
Sure.
What are you going to do? This is the Longshan. Remember Longshan?
Sure. Dragon Mountain.
They had coal, they had bamboo. The coal mountain dried up. They can sell bamboo or they can make tea, and tea is like their only really option to like create a product that transcends their domestic bounds, where it's like you can sell this all throughout China, all throughout the world. But if everyone is doing that in small villages in China, suddenly it becomes a flood of tea. We have too much tea, and so then tea is not essentially the saving grace for these small villages. Is there another option?
The Aoye is the
Tourism?
option.
Eco-tourism?
So right now Well, I mean, it's kind of like apples in America, right?
Okay.
Remember Red Delicious or Pink Lady?
Gross.
Yeah, gross. But in the 80s and 90s, they were like the big new thing, right?
Yeah.
So all these farmers, cherry farmers in like central Washington, tore out their cherry trees to plant these Red Delicious or Pink Lady apples, which 5 years later the market didn't want anymore. Now they're gross. So suddenly you have all these apple trees, a lot of water, a lot of maintenance, a lot of investment to get it going. And just like with tea, if you go pull out the tea, you plant something else. You could plant corn, you could plant wheat, you could plant one of these, grains, potatoes here often in these mountainous areas of the Southwest. You're not going to make any real profit off of that,
Yeah.
You're making a couple hundred RMB. That's right.
You can feed your family. Yeah.
But something I saw just yesterday when we were out there is, like zongzi, right?
Mm-hmm.
The wrapping paper for that, the zongye, which is
So
something.
these are the sticky rice dumplings, usually in like pyramid triangle shapes.
And they get wrapped into
Bamboo leaves.
either bamboo leaves, but in this case, it's a special kind of I guess it's like a cousin of bamboo, little small plant. It grows very similar to bamboo. It takes 3 years to get it going. Yesterday when we were going through Omeishan, I saw they had it going, and I asked them oh, you guys do zongye here? And she's like, yeah, this year is really getting big. Same thing in Hafang. In Hafang, all of these tea producers have torn out their tea to plant Laoye, because right now you can make, whereas maybe you will only make 2,000 to 3,000 RMB per mu, the sixth of an acre on tea. You could make 9,000 per mu on Liaoye this year. And then in 3 years, when they've actually gotten their first harvest of it, I bet you, suddenly, because right now the demand is way above supply, where everyone's going to go plant their Liaoye, their zongye.
Yeah.
They're going to wait 2 or 3 years, and then suddenly
supply is huge. Yeah.
Supply is huge, and then that's just the problem with agriculture is you can't really plant. You can't really deal with nature completely it's not like stock, right? Or it's all okay, buy, sell, drop it, dump it, right?
You have years
to. You need years, especially for these things that aren't, just like corn or potatoes, where it's a one season. It's not a 90-day investment. It's a years and years of investment kind of deal. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, we're figuring it out. Maybe we should talk about Sichuan.
Yeah, let me check the camera and make sure the recording is going all right. Hello. Okay. Yeah, all looks good to me. Is this recording? Okay.
So
we're not in Hefeng or Hubei right now.
We are not.
Even though we're just talking about it, this is the first time I've seen you in like a year.
That's correct. Yeah, I think it's been a year. last April, right?
Last April, yeah. Last time we went to the Guapian, yeah. Yep. And so it's wild, we're in this cooperative together. You guys are here in Hubei. You're doing so much stuff in Hubei and Enshi and Hefeng that obviously there's a lot to talk about. We'll probably talk about that in another episode later.
Probably in Enshi.
Maybe with a woofer or something like that.
Yeah.
But what we're doing here is we're actually in Chengdu, outside of Chengdu, in a small city called Meishan. Meishan is on the way to Leshan. It's by Emershan, and we're sourcing this tea. This is the green tea, the jasmine green tea. We found a few other teas as well, but the jasmine is really what brought us here. So the purpose of this episode is really to talk about sourcing jasmine tea, how we got here, what we discovered, and the information Alex has written down in his little notebook here.
Yeah, so keeping strict accounts.
So Alex, how did we end up in Meishan?
So my advisor for my master's program back in Jingzhou, Wu Shuilian, she was from here. And she had always, from Meishan, and she always talked about, oh, we have tea in my hometown. You guys sell tea, you should sell my tea. And for 2 or 3 years, I was just like, sure, whatever. I was not super excited about it. There was a reputation about Sichuan tea. Maybe I had learned in Enshi. I was like, oh, this is just cheap. Maybe all I knew was it was cheap, right? And it was like they kind of copy everywhere else, right? Mm-hmm. So I was not super excited about it. But nonetheless, I kind of always dismissed it. And then finally, there was someone who was asking about jasmine tea. And I had been given a sample because eventually she told her friend, who was not in tea, who was not in agricultural economics, just this person she grew up with, hey, I have this foreign student here and they sell tea, and can you figure out some tea from our hometown and send some samples. And he did. And I drank them, and they're pretty good.
Yeah,
I was
great.
like
I like
shocked.
them. Yeah.
I was like, they were shockingly good. 'Cause,
So
like,
I have never really liked jasmine tea. I've never really sought it out. I've had like the jasmine flowers as a nice decaf because they're really fragrant. They're very nice, beautiful. But as far as like the jasmine tea goes, I've never had a really good jasmine tea I like. I think my problem though is I was looking at Fujian. And so I was looking at Fujianese jasmine teas, and I was like, okay, this is a little too. The green tea isn't right.
they were all like the rolled pearls, right? Little pearls are just
a lot
broken.
of rolled pearls, but a
Broken
lot of the
chunk.
green style teas in Fujian, they're just not doing right, in my opinion.
Ah, okay.
And so like the white tea jasmine was really good, but that was very expensive. And so you sent the samples of the jasmine from Sichuan, and I drank them. I was like, these are actually really good, because it has that old adage, right, where you see the jasmine flowers, or you smell the jasmine flowers, you taste the green tea. And then there's also, the green tea, the white teas, and we started buying it, and we sold a little bit of it, and now it's like, okay, like, where does this actually come from? And so this is the sourcing trip for it.
Yep, that's right. And yeah, I mean, it certainly has been a very productive day, 2 days. I feel like we did a lot, we saw a lot, we learned a lot. Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like I have a much better appreciation for Sichuan tea now and like what it can do. And I feel like, maybe it was just like a bias born of competition. I think that
Well, maybe let's unpack your previous idea of why you didn't like Sichuan tea.
Sure. So
And so
yeah.
for me, one of the big things is like everything, like all the knockoffs of any tea style in China, Silver Needle, Bilochun, Dragonwell. It's all grown in Sichuan. It's all grown in Sichuan. Anji Baicha, we saw a bunch of Anji Baicha being planted out here. Anji Baicha, it's all grown in Sichuan and then shipped out to the rest of the world. And the issue here is not the fact that the tea tastes not as good as what it is in the core region. It's just dishonest a little bit, in our opinion. Right.
So the first encounter we had with Sichuan tea in a negative context, you may remember,
Tao
Bao. In fact, some of you may have already had some Sichuan tea and you loved it. There was this cooperative in Enshi, Tao Bao, and they sold us red tea. And every year the red tea was a little bit different.
And this is a close cooperative in Enshi.
That's right.
This is the very first cooperative we started working with. This is kind of the reason Alex moved from Jiangsu all the way out to Hubei.
That's right.
To get closer to this cooperative. You've been with them during several Kill Pig days.
That's right. Yep.
You've hung out with them. We've walked the fields. We know the maker, the nephew.
Their kids, the wife, the brother.
We felt pretty close to this cooperative.
And as it turned out, their neighbor, again, not completely out of the good of his heart, also for a competitive situation, right? Revealed, I know where they get their red tea. That comes from Sichuan. Check this out. And he showed us like the exact same teas we had bought from them weeks earlier. So, yeah, what can I say? They were buying tea from Sichuan, and they were doing it for the same reason that many producers in Enshi, or in Hangzhou, for that matter, in a moment we can talk about that, or in Suzhou, buy tea from here. It's much cheaper. It's much cheaper, and the quality is fine.
The quality is very good, yeah.
You don't. It's not like you're tasting like heavy metals or anything crazy like that. It tastes fine. It looks fine. It smells great. So like, you can get the same quality product here, much earlier in the year, and for a cheaper price. When I say early, like, they were picking here, like they had tea ready to go by the end of Chinese New Year's, right?
Yeah, February.
In February, that's correct.
February,
the end of February, middle of February.
Middle of February, February 15th, yeah. And they said they lost a lot because of the frost. We'll talk about that later.
Sure,
but
sure.
It's like that's part of the issue if you're making tea that early. So we're seeing is just a flood of Sichuan teas on the market, mislabeled as other teas from other regions. And so it's not that Sichuan has a bad reputation for making bad tea. It's just that a lot of the tea that we don't want to come from Sichuan comes from Sichuan.
That's right. Yeah. So on the one hand, as a consumer, it's a bummer because you don't really know what the product. There's an incentive. They're incentivized in Suzhou and Hangzhou and Enshi as well to bring tea over from here and then repackage it. But also as a producer, it's frustrating that the first tea we got in Hafeng, we picked on March 22nd, a full month after Sichuan already had their trucks rolling out, right?
Yeah.
So I remember looking on WeChat and seeing people March 1st were posting, even in Hafeng, I got new green tea.
Yep.
There's no way they had new green tea March 1st anywhere in Hafeng, in
Yeah,
any of those
must have
towns.
been imported.
Probably was brought from Sichuan, right? But
Yeah.
so by the time you have your honest tea, March 23rd, March 24th, posting on WeChat, you're already 3-4 weeks behind the first post, right? And I remember when I brought my little sample to like the dean in my department, I was like, "Oh, do you want some tea, right?" And I saw on his table he had already had like all of these samples laid out from other factories,
man.
right? Who probably had sent hit theirs like weeks before, right?
Jeez,
So
yeah.
we were late to the party.
Yeah, so Sichuan is just incredibly productive, very early, and they're learning a lot of different styles. Like what we have here that we'll keep hinting at is a bunch of Dragonwell green tea from the factory we visited. The maker was just like very clear, like, yeah, like, actually, is this from the factory? No.
So it is not from that factory. They have like two factories. So it was where we went was like their main factory, and then they have another factory over in Chemwei, which I guess is where the Jasmine tea gets finally made.
Oh, right.
That's where this Longjing was made.
So yeah, so they have a maker that makes Longjing in Chemwei. They have a maker that makes Biluochun here, and they're very proud of it. They're like, if you want, we can make that for you. It's the best seller.
Yeah, if you want Longjing, we got Longjing. You want Biluochun, we make tons of Biluochun.
Yeah.
He used to have a store in Suzhou where he would
That's right, yeah.
he would just sell Biluochun. That was most
From
of their money.
Sichuan, yeah. And so we've learned a lot on this trip, and we'll kind of get into it. But first, a quick little geological survey on what is Emershan, what is Chengdu. So Chengdu is kind of like the last outpost, kind of before the Sichuan steppe, right? Before like the lands get really, really high, inhospitable. And if you look on a map, you'll see roads, you'll see cities, all the way into the west of China, and then you hit Chengdu and it just stops, right? They're like, no more highways, no more roads. This is where people would get exiled to back in like the Tang Dynasty and like the ancient China. It's like, we don't want you here in Nanjing. We don't want you here in Hangzhou. You go out to as far west as you can go.
And it does feel like really far away from everything else in this country.
It's really cool because we're right by Emershan or Leshan. Emershan is an old sacred Buddhist mountain. It's one of the 4 sacred Buddhist mountains in China, and there's been Buddhist activity on this mountain since about the 1st century AD. So for the past like 2,000 years, Buddhists have been here on this mountain. It's home of the largest stone Buddhist statue, essentially the largest pre-modern statue that we know of, supposedly. It's 71 meters tall, carved out of the side of this mountain. And it's just a really cool site of pilgrimage for a lot of Buddhist people. It's a statue of the Buddha, of course. And I remember reading in the Ming and Qing dynasty, there were 73, 74 Buddhist temples on this mountain, Emershan. And so, in my opinion, I've always thought of Emershan outside of Chengdu as this very holy, very sacred, very religious space. But in the car ride yesterday with the makers and our
so
guide, Alex and them started talking about some really obscure Sichuan history that I've never heard about that just started blowing my mind. So.
It was kind of like an amazing cacophony. First of all, it was a cacophony, right?
Yeah.
You were in between all of that. They were all talking at the same time.
Yeah.
It was incredible. So like the driver would be talking, who was the wife of the guy who owns the factory, right? And the sister in the back, her sister-in-law, the elder sister, was talking to Derek, right? So like I could hear them, and the things they were talking about, they're like riffing off. It was like, listening to a podcast, they're like riffing off of each other, but they're doing it it's like the audio tracks were overlaid, right? They're doing it at the same time. Anyway, so like they're talking about like the Chuanjun, which is like the KMT, the notoriously like brutal nationalist army in Sichuan, which had gone into Ench and other places and done all these massacres. But I think the sister was misremembering a fact from the Long March, because like all this started because I was like, oh, we're passing this martyr cemetery, right? And I was like, oh, there's a martyr cemetery here, like. I didn't know there was like all these revolutionaries in Meishan. And he's like, don't you know? Like the Chuanjun is mostly from here. The bad guys in that story, right? Who beat the communists. Then she's like, yeah, like 9/10, like millions of them died, right?
She kept saying
3.5 million.
3.5 million. She said that about 7 times into my ear, like 3.5 million people they killed.
So I met a guy in Jingzhou who, during like the survey work I was doing for my master's degree, and I was like, oh, like. How did you end up, here in this like really like remote village across the river in Misha from Jingzhou City? he's like, well, my dad was brought here by the Chuanjun as a Zhuanding. So he was like people who were captured in the mountains of like Chongqing, and was transported to Hubei as like an indentured like forced laborer.
Wow.
Like basically like reverse gulag, like nationalist gulag was sent there as a forced laborer, and then just stayed after the liberation, after 1949, and then had a son there, and now the son's like 80 years old. And then, anyway, so it was like bizarre in Jingzhou seeing someone who was brought from the mountains all the way out there to the Zhanghan Plains as an indentured servant. And again, the Chuanjun, even in Hafeng, they have the impression these are the folks that came out there and murked the Hafeng Soviet back in 1932, 1933. So like, yeah, notorious. And she's like giving us all these facts about the Chuanjun, but I think she's mixing it up because she also mentions, well, and then they went to Korea and they fought you Americans and like we fought you guys till you surrendered. And like that in itself is not the same army, right? Because Chuanjun was the bad guys, now she's kind of mixing it up.
Right.
And then she's saying like, yeah, I mean, it was you and the other 8 nations who attacked us. And that's the Qing, that's the Boxer Rebellion, right? So she's mixing up Boxer Rebellion, Korean War, Chinese Civil War, and it's all coming together. And that was kind of funny.
So that was the 3.5 million she was talking about.
Yeah, and then the driver, she was saying like, oh yeah, there was that really touching scene. I forget the name of the show, but she saw on TikTok. She was trying to like get more hints from other people in the car of what the name of that TV series was, where it showed like the Chuanjun, the Sichuan army, massacring the communists here, and then, that's like, I think all this history is coming from like different TikTok videos, right? They're like assembling a knowledge of their past.
It's post-truth, yeah.
It's post-truth, right?
We're just talking about like memories. Like, can we be sure of anything?
Yeah, I think there's like assembling all these TikTok videos into a narrative of national identity, a narrative of a background, right? And
speaking of murking entire populations in cities, what was this guy that you guys mentioned? Started talking about later?
Zhang Shenzhong is the guy. First of all, like he's known for the seven Sha stele, where like he went around to the cities and allegedly it's debated now.
What time is this? That fall of the dissolution of the Ming Dynasty?
So the Ming Dynasty lost, right, for a whole series of reasons. But like Ming Dynasty was collapsing, and there was this
1700s.
1600s, and there was this peasant rebel from Shanxi because like they were just starving in Shanxi straight up. They were not Shanxi but Shanxi, double A's for English.
Okay.
So Shanxi, peasant rebel rises up, and the Ming just have no resources. They're like, you know what, you can just be governor of Hubei, and then you stay on the Ming. And within like 5 months, he then again was like, I don't want Hubei, I want to be king of the West, right? And they're like, you can be king of the West. And he's like, no, I'm in charge. He like ends up going into Anhui and then like destroying like the ancestral temples of the Ming, because the Ming are from Anhui, right? The Zhu clan and all that. Anyway, so like he gets into trouble. He overextends, flees to Hunan, overextends, then flees to Sichuan. And by the time he's in Sichuan, things are going really south for the Ming. The Qing armies have already broken over. They've crossed the Huai River. They're in southern China. And he's trying to build this, area of support, this Daxi, the Xi dynasty, the West dynasty he's trying to build in Sichuan. And the local population is not cooperating. And allegedly, then he goes around to all these cities and just exterminates the whole population. We know that from census data, there were like 2 or 3 million people initially in Sichuan, and then in the next like Qing census, there was like 2/3 of the population just not there. Up to 85% by some estimates aren't there. They're gone, and maybe it was famine, maybe it was disease. It's probably all of the above. Plus, indeed, entire city massacres, right? Where he's like going around like you're disloyal. I'm just going to kill the entire city. Written by the victors, written by the Qing who come in, right? Who say, oh, and we save Sichuan from these terrible...
The sister in the car was saying he would leave this plaque, right?
That's right,
She's seen the plaque.
Supposedly they found the plaque, right? Yeah. And the plaque is just like, for your disloyalty, you have been punished. Sha, he writes Sha 7 times. Sha, 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 Sha. I'll kill you for all your disloyalties. I'll kill you, I'll kill you, I'll kill you, I'll kill you, I'll kill you. And then supposedly he and his army went around and, depopulated areas. But they brought him up not because they, feel like they were victimized or whatever, but like they brought him up because here in Meishan, right behind us, like this wetland ties into the Min River, And within that river, apparently his treasure ship, when he was, when he was fleeing, there was so much gold in the ship, it sunk. And over the last 20 years, there were some villages, allegedly, again, I'm going to put asterisks on everything they say. Supposedly, all the villages nearby, they just haven't been planting in their fields. They've just been going out into the river and digging up
sunken treasure.
Yeah, sunken treasure, right? And then finally, about 10 years later, the government put a crackdown on that. No more.
So
you're done.
That's just a wild story. It's like a pseudo would-be emperor, bandit rebel, warlord.
That's right. Yep.
Who took control of all of Sichuan and was just murdering, like massacring
depopulating
villages,
the population,
taking all of their wealth, putting it on a boat, putting it on his ship, and then that ship sinks in the Min River, right?
That's right. But I think like it's that whole area basically west of Yichang which has no people in it, and we know this. Like even for example in Hafeng, in that village, there are all of these mounds on top of the village, and I asked them like whose graves are those? And this old guy, Tian, says that those are the people that lived in Manyingtai before the Qing dynasty. And when they got there, everyone was dead. No one was in the village. It was just, so when the Wang family got there, no one was alive. And they don't know what happened. He thinks maybe it was a wenyi, maybe it was a plague. Yeah. Everyone's dead. So there is this whole massive movement of people from Hubei, from Hunan, from Guangdong, from Guangxi, to repopulate Sichuan, which leads to now the modern dialect spoken here, right? Yeah. It's the Yi people. It's the minority people here who are like the true indigenous people of Sichuan. The people who've come later, they basically speak this kind of like silly Mandarin, right? And they've come much later. This is the repopulation efforts during the Qing dynasty. Anyway, so like this, all history is confused, and I think in the popular imagination, it goes in some very interesting directions. And
I mean, I kind of want to get into the Jasmine tea.
We should, yeah,
but
sure.
there was one more.
One more detail.
I need clarification on.
Sanxingdui?
Yeah, like the ancient civilization they were talking
so
about.
So Sanxingdui is a well-known archaeological site in Sichuan, and it's very widely discussed in like social media here, because there are all these really cool things they're finding in there, like really elaborate bronzeware, really beautiful works of art, like chandeliers, incredible like totems they're pulling out of the ground.
From ancient history. Right?
Really ancient, like as old as the Zhou dynasty, right?
So like 2000 BC, like.
That's right, and there's a lot of debate. Okay, first of all, would these people who are living here even call themselves Chinese, right? Is this a separate civilization? Like the ancient civilization down in Yunnan, right? They probably wouldn't have thought of themselves as Chinese, but it's a point. And on the one hand, it's a point of like historical, cultural debate. Is this culture related to the contemporaneous Zhou dynasty? But I would say the popular narrative media here is like, wow, look at how intelligent, how amazing our ancestors were. Maybe it's some Sichuan local pride. You know, they had fully automaton hearts that were working, the guy was saying, right? and he's just like, and like the government has to stop excavations out there because like they're trying to keep the truth from us that actually
too much ancient technology.
It was like, yeah, it was like, well, and then he said this thing where it's just like, it just goes to show it's like we always knew humanity builds itself up and then it's just like, cyclically wiped out, right? And we come back. So this is like some older ancient Atlantean, fingers of the gods, kind of like Graham Hancock kind of thinking where, there was this ancient pre-civilization. And like here, this is like, one of the treasure troves of that. So it has to be shut down because they don't want us to know how amazing humans used to be. We all can be immortal, right? There's no need for us to get sick. The truth is in there. And he's like kind of like a TCM fanatic, right?
Yeah, he only drinks flowers.
Only drinks flowers. And then during dinner, he was like messing with my fingers. He's like, you feel that? It's your pancreas. You got to like play with your fingers.
Yeah, I saw him like assessing your wrist and being like, okay,
that's
you have
right.
This issue.
Yep, yeah. So he's a big believer in TCM. Tried to get his older daughter, who's now a senior in high school, to do TCM. Not interested.
But this is also, I really vibe with this guy.
100%, yeah.
100%. Like he's a really cool, down-to-earth guy. Like we'll talk about it later. He started his own accidental cooperative.
That's right, yeah.
He's very reasonable, very easy to work with, very friendly.
Right.
And then it's like, yeah, like here comes this like, and it's cool because I know a lot of like Western American conspiracy theories, but I don't know a whole lot of Chinese ones.
And yeah, that's it. So Sanxingdui is the ancient civilization, and the truth is out there. And
the truth is out there. I remember hearing one about the mendicant knife sellers that are like will read your fortune and sell you a knife.
Oh,
and then
okay.
And then the fortunes always come true, and they'll just go through towns. And every now and then you'll see, and it's a more of a modern conspiracy theory where it's like you'll still see the mendicant knife sellers, and you'll ask them for a fortune, and then they'll tell you something that will come true, and then they'll be like, if it doesn't come true, your knife is free, right?
And then I leave no contact information and go on to the next town, right? Yeah.
Anyways, back to reality.
Back to Jasmine tea.
So, first off, getting out to the tea house. So this is your directors, not your directors, your advisor's childhood friend who introduced us to a tea house in his home village.
Yes, the conspiracy theorist and driver in this whole
And
operation.
the two sisters. And so we get there, and we meet the two sisters, and we're drinking a lot of jasmine teas. And so what was your first impression? Because I remember you taking a lot of notes as soon as we got there. And they're telling you all about, this is good jasmine, that's not good jasmine, this is what we make, this is what we sell.
I think, when we first got there, they didn't know what to make of us.
Yeah.
So they was kind of BSing us at the very beginning. Because I remember they're trying to show me these two pictures with different lighting and being like, you see that tea? That's the tea from the high mountain. You see that tea? That's the tea from the low mountain. And here they think like a yellower, lighter tea color on the leaf indicates it's high mountain, indicates high quality, right? And they're really trying to push that. Mm-hmm. And that just seems like marketing. So at the beginning, they were like giving us like marketing kind of stuff, right?
I was not vibing with them. I vibed with like our driver, but I did not vibe with them so much until eventually they kind of won me over towards the end of it. But yeah, they're very much. We get in there and they're just like giving us a pitch.
That's right.
And I can't tell if it's like her personality or if it's marketing because she was chugging Red Bulls, right?
That's right. Yeah, I can't figure out if she had 4 or 5 in the course of the day. 'Cause I remember at the end when we were heading out, I was pretty fatigued after the first pitch we heard. I was like, give me a Red Bull. And then she has like a huge bag of like all these like milks and Red Bulls. And then she just like, as we're going along in the day, drinking Red Bulls, tossing them out onto the road. So when we were at the first place where you flew the drone, which is a funny clip you can put in here, I remember like I heard like the ting of it hitting the ground. So she had one there for sure. She had the long skinny one in the car.
Oh, she had the blue one. Yeah.
She had the blue. She had at least 2 yellow ones and 1 blue one. But the whole bag was gone by the end. I think I only had 1.
I had 1.
Okay, so she only had 3.
Okay.
So she had three Red Bulls then.
But she talked like she was on Red Bulls. Like she would really, really, really quick bullets of machine gun talking, punctuated only by, and then she'd keep going. And like, also like she was kind of afraid in her pauses that you would start talking, so she would just step on herself a whole lot of just like, she'd give us a ton of information. But anyways.
Anyway, so at first, I was kind of like, oh man, but I was like taking notes, and then later, I think once we demonstrated we had some modicum of knowledge of tea, things got a bit better, and they gave us a much more balanced narrative. So why drink Sichuan jasmine tea? Jasmine tea is produced in 4 areas of China. It's produced in Yunnan, it's produced in Sichuan, produced in Guangxi at Hangzhou, and it's produced in Fujian at Fuzhou. So there's 4 places you could get jasmine tea. And Sichuan, this area of Sichuan, only produces about 13% of the national yield. Oh. So like it's not even the number 1 place, although it is growing. It's the fastest growing area for it. And their pitch was, well, in Fuzhou, which I think you touched on a little bit, like historically, it was not great green tea. Yeah. The green tea they would put into jasmine tea is not green tea you could drink on its own. Mm. So their pitch here was, we were already making green tea. We were already making Maofeng. We were already making Maojian. And then, hey, they got these they realized there was a demand about 50, 60 years ago. And they start taking their already good drinkable green tea and adding flowers. Yeah. Adding jasmine. So like...
Which honestly, this does kind of check out because...
Sure.
I've had the jasmine teas in Fujian and I didn't like any of them. Like, in my opinion, it has always been like the green tea is not good enough quality. And it's like, as you said, like it's only good with the jasmine flowers. And we see this in a lot of different drinks, throughout the world, throughout history. Like, think of like an old fashioned. Old fashioned was made from like really terrible bourbon, like really undrinkable spirits. And what you would do is you would mix it with a bunch of sweetness, sugar with it. This is the invention of the cocktail, where it's you take something that you can't drink alone, and then you mix it with a bunch of things, and then it's suddenly drinkable. And so the idea of like adding flowers to something that's not so good, and then it becomes a better tea. So.
Okay, yeah, I think that's probably a fair speculation as to the origin.
Speculation.
Yeah, the origin of jasmine tea, and quite possibly, right? It was something again, kind of made for foreigners from the get-go, right?
Yeah.
So it was made in Fuzhou, much like red tea, much like oolong tea. This is kind of a tea which is always made to sell somewhere else. Yeah.
But honestly, like having the teas in Sichuan, because we've had a lot of teas like the Maofeng, the Maozhen, and the what was it, the Ganlu?
Ganlu, yeah, the
Ganlu, and then the what's the sparrow's tongue?
Chiesha.
Which she says they don't call it sparrow's tongue.
Chiesha, yeah, here it's Jieching. They call it Jieching. So bamboo leaf green.
Bamboo leaf green. And so she's like, yeah, like nobody in Sichuan calls it sparrow's tongue.
That's right.
Or maybe no one here at least.
Or maybe no one in that tea shop at least.
maybe she doesn't.
Maybe she doesn't call it Chiesha.
But yeah, no, it was just small piece of interesting information where it's like, yeah, like the sparrow's tongue, it didn't seem very, very popular with what they're making. They're mostly drinking the Maofeng.
Yeah, and that's always like one of the first questions I was there is like, what did your parents drink growing up here? Did they drink GHC? And I'm like, and her, so they had all these beautiful like glass cups lined up for us, right?
Oh
And then in her mug in the corner, she was drinking Maofeng, right?
Yep.
So like, that's not the tea. In the morning when they're drinking on their own, they aren't actually drinking GHC. They aren't actually drinking even jasmine tea. They're drinking that Maofeng.
They said they don't even drink that much jasmine, right?
That's right, yeah. And her impression, like you foreigners, you guys are the ones who drink jasmine tea.
Yeah.
She has Italian, Korean, Japanese customers. So.
Yeah. And so eventually we do get out to her tea garden. We meet her grandparents.
That would be the husband's parents.
The husband's parents.
Husband's parents, yeah.
Husband's parents. And they were very friendly. They were out in the fields picking tea. It is it is April 15th. It's tax day.
Tax day.
Anyways, ignore that.
Moving on.
And so they're out in the garden picking tea, and it's summer tea now. Even though it's like kind of like mid-April, you would still think it's spring tea, but they're saying this is the summer pick.
That's right. Yep.
And it's just like it still looks beautiful though. Still like small leaves, you can still see buds on it and stuff like that. There aren't a whole lot of pickers. She was saying if you want more pickers, come here like a month ago, like mid-March, right?
And their picking standard is incredible. It's like it's a pick standard well above what we're getting in Hafeng for this time of the season. Because I saw what they had in the bag there, and although
really good, yeah,
their fingernails were hitting it too much, you could kind of see like it was a little rough on the ends there.
Okay.
Nonetheless, like it was just like the always, it was either just bud and the one partially open leaf. That'd be like the highest pick quality in Enshe, which we can't even get consistently the first week, and they're getting it more than a month after the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason Sichuan's taking over the world of tea. Like.
Sure, yeah, it was like an incredible pick, and they aren't paying very much for it. I think she was saying. Yeah,
it doesn't seem like it.
No, I think it was 15 RMB a gin. I think was the price
for the fresh leaves.
They're getting it today, which is still more than it's in Hafeng right now. But again,
but if the pick is that small.
The pick is that small. That's like a quality of pick we pay 40 or 50 for at Hafeng.
I'm used to, in a lot of places they'll do it by the day, like 200 kwai per day, right? And so how many gin can you pick in a day? Like maybe 15, 20?
Yeah, I think she was saying, like, because a couple of days ago, the sister was still picking, right, the older one, and I think she was saying she made like 100, 90 to 100 a couple of days ago.
90 to 100 gin?
RMB. So she's taking her take home price.
But that's the sister picking. Right?
That's the sister picking.
So that's not like a professional picker necessarily.
I think so. Like as the day moved on, I think I realized that older sister was like she picks tea, whereas the wife she sells tea.
Oh, okay.
And that the more they talked, the more I realized like she just like the sister knew where the tea fields were. She knew where to find. Whereas the sister who sold tea, she couldn't actually identify the indigenous cultivar so well. Whereas the older sister was like, that's it, right? So I think the division of labor was there.
When we got out into the garden, their first garden, what do you think of the mixed ecology? I remember seeing, there were the nice tidy rows of the tea bushes. But there's a lot of other, it wasn't a whole mountainside, right? It wasn't like that second place we went to. It was very mixed.
Yeah, so speaking of the mixed ecology, I saw they had mixed rapeseed. I saw they had mixed cabbage. I saw on the lower rows they had potatoes, which is what they do in Hafeng too. So like I saw nothing which would produce nitrogen, nothing which would necessarily help the tea. But there was an essay from Jiangsu, I think just 2 years ago, saying that they found when you co-crop corn, not well known for making soils happier or healthier or more nutrient rich, there were still some symbiotic relationships happening where there was a healthier soil biome.
Okay.
So although maybe the available nitrogen content may decrease, you saw more microorganisms, you saw more things thriving in the soil when you mixed two crops together. You get corn and tea. Corn is probably the last thing you'd think of.
Yep.
So I reckon, without any knowledge of anything to go off of, that by mixing the potatoes, by mixing the rapeseed, by mixing the cabbage, there is still something positive happening for that soil microbiome.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was like, for me, it's always something I look at when I get out into the mountains, especially a new location, because I've noticed even in Enshe, is it Shuan'en that has like that big wutai?
Sure, yeah, that's
Yeah.
right, that's right.
And
Yeah.
it's like a beautiful government plot. Everyone loves it. It looks stunning, but it's monoculture. It's a mountain of just pure tea bushes.
Well, and something I noticed there is like the soil. It was red, right? The soil Here, and it's the same color
It's like
as the plot we have high. So there's like there's a couple of plots we have in Hafeng, right? And there's one plot where I've noticed like half of the tea sprouts we planted died.
Oh.
And just this like these two areas, I had to figure out like what happened. And I took it to this old guy. Maybe we'll meet in the next couple of days. Professor
Nice.
who used to lead the tea department at my university. And he took one look at the soil and was like, "This soil is no good. This is the red soil. This is not what you want for growing tea."
Huh.
And I saw they had planted some sprouts in the same looking soil, also side of a hill, also without tarps, same conditions. They had 2 die out of 20, or we had maybe 10 die out of 20. So
Is it a different cultivar? Like,
maybe it's the cultivar.
Yeah,
And then
because
I asked her, it's like when did you guys plant it? She planted it a bit earlier than we did, but it's like it was a stunning difference in outcome. And then
yeah. Because I remember in Sichuan Dao, like the Bilo Chun, he says the soil here is very acidic. In other tea plants, other tea cultivars don't do well here.
so it could be the
And so
cultivar,
it could be the cultivar because also like, in Yunnan, I saw the same soil in Yunnan, right? In Yunnan, they're doing the different type of Camellia sinensis, right? Camellia sinensis assamica, the big leaf varietal.
So that could be it, yeah. Because I feel like
Dragon Ball 43, like
what they're growing here is number 9, right?
Number 9,
which
yeah.
is like a Sichuan cultivar I'd never heard of before I came here.
maybe we can pick up some seedlings.
Yeah, so that seems to be doing well, and yeah, so it was very interesting to see, and it was cool to see the mix of cultivars where they had the indigenous right next to the number 9, right next to the Anji Baicha, and
Yeah, and so that was
Nice
cool
mix,
too, seeing
yeah.
like the Anji Baicha, seeing the number 9, and then seeing like they
Lao
mentioned
Chuancha, the old Sichuan, right?
old heirloom,
Yeah.
and they mentioned like I remember hearing like Dabai Hao.
Yeah,
Like,
Fuji
they have
Dabai,
Fujing Dabai.
131. They have all.
131. They have essentially all the different cultivars from China growing here, depending on what they want to make. And so, let's see, where do you want to go from here? We can
So
talk
I think
about-
we should talk a little bit more about when do you get jasmine in the year, right?
Oh, that's right, yeah.
So, like-
because we got here, it's April 15th, and there's no jasmine tea. Why is
Green
that?
tea's almost done.
Green
So
tea's, they have green tea.
they have the green tea, but the flowers that go in. So historically, like 10, 20 years ago, if you want to put jasmine flavor into green tea, you don't go wait for the flowers. You just take the oil, right? There's that extract you put in
Yeah.
there, and it tastes. It gets the job done. It tastes like jasmine.
I've had way too many bad.
But like it also can, as she was saying, it also can make it way too strong, like overpowering. You just taste jasmine. Not only do you smell it, you just taste it, and that's not what you want. So the government's cracked down on it here because Chenwei County is the place where they grow the jasmine flowers in Sichuan, also part of Ameishan prefecture.
Yeah.
So consequently, they've really cracked down on that, and everyone now has to wait for the flowers, and the flowers don't really bloom properly until May. But they're saying like, if you want the best fragrance, you have to wait until July. When you pick the flowers, you have to do 2 bakes with it. And again, I asked her, it's not a typical tea kiln. It's not a wok like it was historically in Fujian. It's neither of them. There's a special machine we haven't seen yet where they're doing 2 bakes. So you bake it, right? And then you let it dry. And then tea is great at absorbing smells, right? It's after it's baked, then it sucks and sucks and sucks. Then you bake it again and you let it suck and suck and suck, and then you take out the jasmine flowers.
So the way I've seen it done before is they do different rows, right? So they have like that screen, the really fine mesh screen, and they'll put a bunch of the freshly baked jasmine flowers on it, and then on a row above it, they'll put another screen with all of the green tea. And then they'll do this in like, several different layers of like flowers, green tea, flowers, green tea. And so the green tea is absorbing all of the aroma of the flowers, but it doesn't have any actual flowers in it, right?
Critical point. Yeah, there's no, like, so when the tea is done, right, when it gets sent back from Chenwei to the tea house here, there are no flowers in that tea. And then they have to then add dried flowers to the product per the customer's demand. In the South, where they have less of a history drinking jasmine tea, it's kind of more of a new thing for, I guess they were saying middle-aged women. They want to see the flowers in there. Yeah. Whereas in the north of China, for example, Xiaoyan's father, he loves jasmine tea. No flowers.
No flowers. So the flowers are added as an affectation. Like they're not necessary. They don't do anything for it. They just make it look like there's flowers in it.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting because I've heard, in Fujian, the saying is like, good jasmine tea doesn't have any flowers. Bad jasmine tea has flowers in it. The good jasmine tea doesn't need the flowers to have the fragrance.
I wonder then about osmanthus black tea. Because I feel like I've added osmanthus flowers before to a tea. Oh. And I could taste them. I could taste the flowers I've added. So I wonder.
I'm wondering if that osmanthus black tea is actually coming from the flowers being in them or in the process. We should.
That would be fun to see. Yinzhou, that needs to be researched.
Research this. We're gonna pick out all of the tea from the flowers and see. Because I know like when I buy it, she'll send me an extra bag of jasmine.
Right.
Not jasmine of
the osmanthus like little flowers, right? Yeah.
So it's like, is this necessary? But it does smell beautiful. The flowers. Well, these jasmine flowers, I'm not sure if they smell very good. So
they taste fine. So if you eat one by mistake, don't worry about it. It's
right, exactly.
Tasty little flowers. Was there anything else on the where, the when, the what? No, I think we got the main jasmine points. Talk
about the factory. We only have a few more minutes left here.
Yeah, we got all the funny car facts. We haven't talked about the serious drop in price. Do you want to mention numbers?
We can avoid that for now. We'll do a whole expose
yeah,
later.
No worries. No flowers. Yep, Fujian pearls.
The factory a little bit. The machines we saw.
Okay, yeah, we can
just wrap it up. We are about at an hour, so.
Yeah, I guess I want to talk about what I did not expect when I came here.
Sure.
Beyond, of course, Sichuan tea not being terrible. Also, I guess I thought we were going to Omeishan from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
And then when we got the tickets, I was like, all right, Omeishan. And he's like, no, go to Meishan.
Meishan.
With the removed. And we got here, and there was no mountain. So I come to Meishan, there's no mountain. I was super confused, I guess.
It's right by Loshan.
Yeah, not geological, but geographically. I was confused. Where the heck were we going? Because I come to this place, no mountains, and then the tea is far away. The first vibe I got here was like, shoot, I've messed up. Here I am, and if you look here,
follow the lead.
Yeah, like the Chengdu Sichuan plains right now, basically. Follow the lead into the abyss. Maybe it's too bright.
I'm sure they can't see it.
They can't see it anyways. But yeah, imagine it's flatland, right? And there's a marsh behind us even, right? Mm-hmm. And I was kind of bummed out, and then they're taking me to Hot Pot, because of course it's Sichuan. And we're waiting for Derek to arrive on the train. And as we're passing by, I see Sudongpo. We're currently in Dongpo Hotel, right? We went to Sudongpo.
Which is the famous poet Su Shi. His pen name was Sudongpo, and this is his hometown. His
hometown, I guess. And there's a temple here, the Su family temple. For the three Sus in this hotel corridor as you walk by. Even here, as I look behind the camera here, I see they have all of these works that were either as paintings or as poems or from other people in the Su clan later in the Ming and Qing dynasty. And it's really the theme of this whole city. Yeah. And that, I guess, kind of made a connection for me because I remember a long time ago I was making that blog post, translation for the Bilo Chun, and there was that poem from the guy himself when he was on the lake there. on Lake Tai, was it?
Yeah.
He was talking about like seeing the snow on the lake and this beautiful image and like.
Well, also, like he's the one who did the calligraphy for Longjing, like Lao Longjing. And
Oh
so
wow!
he's very famous for like green tea in that region as well.
So and now we've come to his hometown. So like seeing that ancestral temple and then being now in Dongpo Hotel as I speak to you, I feel like we've made a connection. We've made some guanxi with good people. We've come back to the source of this tea legend, and I think he'd be proud to know that. Although at the time, was there any tea even produced here? 1,000 years ago, I don't know, but like.
I mean, honestly, like coming up from Yunnan, from Sichuan, this is some of the ancestral points, the original points of tea production, right? From Dashui-shan in Yunnan. Sichuan is always famed as like the ancestral home of tea. You see it in Chengdu in old history and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I would assume it probably came from this region spread through China. Though Sudongpo was probably a little late. It was probably around 400 or 500 AD. Sudongpo is like Song Dynasty, so that's 1100s, like 1000s.
That's right. And you said when you were in Suzhou, there's this dish we had last night that was fantastic.
Yeah, the Sudongpo roe.
Sudongpo roe, which Suzhou also claims as its own,
Yeah.
but may actually have an origin here, or at least they claim it here. It's contested, right? Who knows? But at the same point, like yesterday in the factory, all of these biluchun, like production, all these devices, right?
Interesting, yeah.
And so like biluchun, of course, Suzhou made, but now it has become Sichuan. So like Suzhou has appropriated Sudongpo, maybe even the meat and the story and his personage, right, as part of their local history. But at the same time now, I think Sichuan has the last laugh as they're going to get all the biluchun production. Anyways, we'll have more to talk about in Ensha, I think.
Yeah, I mean, for me, what's really interesting is learning about jasmine tea, where it's like it's the early spring picks of the green tea, but then the jasmine flowers are added later, and the jasmine flowers are more of a summer harvest thing. And so just getting this, I have this like time map of China, like where I need to be at certain times to see the tea production. And so now I have a new place for June or July, right?
That's
Go to
right.
Sichuan to see the plucking of jasmine and see the making of jasmine tea. This is a tea that, has really grown on me, that I'm excited to actually visit the farm, and I'm actually happy that it does come from a farm. Because our connection point was,
The owner of, like a truck dispatch cooperative thing.
We didn't get to talk about him enough, but
Yeah.
he started his own cooperative with that truck dispatch. But yeah, and so I'm really excited to see like the actual origin point of it, to taste the teas, to see the factory, and get that peace of mind as far as like, okay, this does come from a smaller plot of land, only a couple moo, they have different gardens, different places and stuff like that. It's not some big mass conglomerate production that is faceless, right?
That's
we actually
right.
have some people behind it, so.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for joining. This is a visual podcast. For those listening, it's also going to be available on YouTube, on the One River Tea YouTube channel. Again, this is Alex, who's been in the cooperative since the genesis. We started this together, us and Xiaoyan, which maybe we'll get to see later. And yeah, a lot of cool stuff coming out of Hubei and Hefeng, and we'll do some podcasts talking about that soon. So until next time, guys, Derek from One River Tea.
Alex too.
All right, brew happy.
Peace out.